Jim, I feel like you're having this really exciting year. The highlight of it, of course, being Made in Heaven.
For sure.
In which you were so good as Adil Khanna, this sort of slick, rich businessman who's having an affair with his wife's best friend.
Right. That's me.
Did you enjoy that part?
I did. Yeah. I was really excited to work with all of them, of course, right off the bat. And then they were so interested in continuing to complicate the character.
Yeah.
Because it would have been very sad for me if I had got onto set and started having discussions with them and they were like, no,
Right.
you don't love Tara.
Correct.
You don't. I would have been like, oh, okay, fine. So I'm just playing simple
Adulterous husband, right,
yeah,
right,
is that
right.
all no, but they were very interested in like, what does it mean to love two people? Does that happen? How does it happen? What are the two different kinds of love you have? It's cool because one is more like a familiar childhood space love.
Right.
And another one is a very like, it's much more codependent.
Sure.
In a weird way. Like, I don't think Adil realizes how similar
I was going to say.
the two of them are.
It's true. You realize it as a viewer when you step back and see what she's done to get there.
Yeah.
So you know how duplicitous they are.
I mean, not just duplicitous, but just like how she'll do whatever it takes to
Right.
get her work done.
Right.
And I don't think he realizes that. I think like he's still a bit stuck in this idea that she's my wife now, but she's somebody that works for me. Because
Right.
that's how it all started.
Correct.
You know? So it's a strange kind of, I think, I don't know.
And he certainly feels like he's higher than her, right? Not just in the work.
I think he thinks that.
Yeah, because he tells her that. Doesn't he tell her at one point that tune apni
Basically.
औकात दिखा दी है?
Yeah. I think he does think that. And whether he truly thinks it,
That's right.
I don't know. But
It's the right blow to deliver at that time, right?
also that it like, also there are things that just manifest into words sometimes that it's the right, like what you're saying, it's just the right card to play there.
Right.
It's not necessary that you totally believe it, but I think in some ways he does.
It has to come from, from at least feeling it
Yeah. And we like to believe that like in relationships and in love and in all of these kinds of things that people are equal. We like to have this constant like, people are equal thing and people aren't equal.
They're not. It's never.
It's not like that. There's always some kind of strange power dynamic playing out. And it changes and it morphs and they flow into each other and it becomes different and at some point she'll have it, I presume.
Yeah.
But it is the case, just is the case.
You know, they've been writing season 2. Zoya said that they've been working on it. Do you have an idea of where it goes, of where these people go?
Yeah, season 2 starts with I'm pregnant and it's Faiza's. And no, I really don't know. I don't know.
It's funny you say this because I asked Kalki this question as well. She of course plays Faiza, the woman that you're having the affair with, and she said what would be interesting, and she was just speaking about what she thought might be interesting. She said what would be interesting is if season 2 began with one of the two women being pregnant, because that would be a great place to be in, right?
I agree.
Because both of the relationships have collapsed at the end of season 1.
Yeah.
And now he's in this situation, right?
And his sperm doesn't work, you know what I mean? So whose is it?
Correct. Many questions.
Exactly.
But don't you also have a brand new Netflix original that just dropped, House Arrest?
I do.
That's the story of a guy who's locked himself indoors and he refused to get out. And you play JD, his best friend, who shows up in holograms.
Yeah.
To kind of.
Yeah, we kind of like fizzle into life. So we're in the same space, but we can't actually see each other or interact.
Right. What was interesting about this one?
Well, when I read the script, it's like it played out in my head like an Edgar Wright film. It played out like Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz or The World's End, you know? And yeah, that was the main draw for me. I hadn't done a comedy. I thought this would be fun to do that.
But you're also continuing to do theatre, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm doing 2 plays just now.
I just saw an ad for a monologue that you're doing.
Yeah, it's called Seawall. It's by Simon Stephens. It's really, really good. It's just lovely to read a play that's just so elegantly and precisely written, where you really don't have to do anything. Just follow the punctuation and try to tell the story.
Right.
Everything that is required is in there. I remember the first time I read it out loud, I started a sentence and I got halfway through and I was like, oh shit, it's still the same sentence. Oh shit, there's no commas.
Right.
Oh God, okay, one second, I'm gonna start this sentence again. And I went back to the top of the paragraph and I started to read it again, and I got the whole sentence out all the way through without taking a breath or a pause, all the way through with all the ideas that were embedded in it until the end. And
wow.
immediately, the words just do it. It's
and
just
it's a 30-minute piece.
It's about a 30 minute, 15 pages, so about 32 minutes.
What kind of prep goes into that? How much time does one need to get into that?
Well, we've had a couple sessions of rehearsal, but the problem is that I'm also rehearsing another play with the same director, and it's a 2-hander, and it's really complicated and requires real precision. So that's kind of taking up a lot of my time. We're rehearsing almost every day, 10 to 5, 10 to 6. We go into tech this coming week. So we'll really try to nail things down. And it's interesting because the other actor I'm working with is a friend of mine. But we're just very different kinds of actors.
Right.
We just have very different approaches. So we both, not only am I not only am I like her character and she's like my character, so we're playing against type as
right,
it is.
Right.
And I'm the kind of actor that I like to know my intentions very clearly. I like to know at which point does the penny drop for me within the scene, and I like all of that to be very clearly mapped out.
Right.
But then I like a bit of freedom.
Sure.
Like if I feel like going on a walk, I'll go on a walk. If I feel like changing up the blocking, I prefer all of those kinds of things. And she is very different. For her to really be able to get into it and feel through everything, she needs clear markers of, okay, on this line I move here, on this thing this happens, this happens. So it's interesting because we're coming to a kind of mutual way of playing out the scene, which is part hers and part mine. So we will nail down some things very, very clearly.
Correct.
At this point, you do go for this walk. You do sit down at this point, things like that.
Yeah.
And then, but within that, because infinity is on the head of a pin, even within that, I can still get away with
sort of
some flourishes if I feel like,
But tell me, how does continuing to do theatre sort of invigorate you for your, or if it does, for your film and your, series and television, whatever else you're doing?
Well, there are 2 things. One, it kind of really frustrates you because you read a play you read a script itself that's just so precise.
Yeah.
The cutoff is at that point. It needs to be at that point. It's important that it's at that point because it means something.
Right.
So if she says, I either do it or I don't, scares me. Work, stopping work scares you. What'll I do? We'll go away. We can do whatever we want. I'm being serious. I mean it. I don't.
Got it.
It just has to be like that.
Right.
If she doesn't hit those cut-offs, it doesn't give her the same increasing level to I don't. The final one. It just has to happen like that. And then the blueprint of your performance is just embedded into the thing. And so then all you have to do is try to create a vessel for the words, as opposed to doing interesting things because the words themselves are not that interesting.
Right.
I really do feel that an actor's job is to just do things, like just try to say the words and show up and be there and play whatever complexity you can manage. But making it interesting should never be your intention.
Right.
It should already be interesting.
Be interesting, correct.
That's a
and that should be the
scriptwriter's
reason
job.
for doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one part is that. Another part is it just you basically learn techniques and, for lack of a better word, tricks of how to approach text, of how to approach a scene.
Right.
From somebody who knows more than you, because the director's usually worked more than you have or has more experience. So it's like you're learning and imbibing approaches to a scene, and you're learning how to work on a scene alone because you've seen the process
Right.
with somebody else.
Right. You know, in Sanju last year, you were the friend who introduces the protagonist to hard drugs. But it was really Padmaavat, in which, of course, you played Malik Kapoor, who's Alauddin Khilji's right-hand guy and his sometime lover. Right. And his sometime lover, which really, which got all those great reviews. You have that terrific song, Binte Dil, which sort of very perfectly kind of captures their relationship, because he gets out of the tub with him, so you know that he occupies that space as well.
Yeah.
But then he must retreat when Khilji brings a woman or goes to a woman's bed.
Well, he tries to
That's true.
get involved.
He tries to get out.
He's not allowed. Yeah.
Did you enjoy that character?
Yeah, I really enjoyed playing him. I enjoyed playing him. I enjoyed acting with Ranveer. I enjoyed Sanjay Leela Bhansali's direction. I think we at some point just got on the same page about what we were trying to achieve with the character. I think in the beginning they were like, "Oh, you want that thing? Sure, I'll do that thing." You know,
right. Because he's very precise, right?
He wants,
he knows what he wants. Yeah,
he wants real precision, and then I think at some point it was a bit like, you know, things would happen, and he'd be like, "Can you do this during this line?" And I'd be like, "Yes," and he'd be like, but he'd let it go, because I didn't go yes immediately. I did it yes, you know. And then we'd do 2 or 3 takes, and then he'd call me over and he'd be like, "What did you want to do during that line?" And I'd be like, he's like, "You're going to do some nautanki? Do it. Let's see." And then it just became fun. It just became really fun.
And he'd keep it sometimes?
Oh, yeah. There were bits that we just threw in. I remember just one simple thing had happened. He was setting up the scene, which just shows you the importance of like being there for rehearsal.
Right.
Being there while the shot is being set up. It's so important.
Yeah.
The actors don't really do it
No
here,
one does.
but it's so important. I was just there. I happened to be there, and there was a lion there, and I was listening to what he was saying, and I had to like be peeking in. So I've started to look into the room, and I've just, you know, him allowed in whatever they're like. It's him and his wife.
Yes.
And I've just, while doing this discussion, I've put my hand into the mouth of a lion that's there, and my hand is just in the mouth, and I'm kind of moving my hand in its mouth, and he's looking at my hand in the lion's mouth, and he's like, okay, we need to get it from outside as well. We need to get this, whatever this thing is as well. And I was like, that's so cool.
That's great. Yeah. But you know, Sanjay Leela Bhansali and Rajkumar Hirani, who was your director on Sanju, are 2 of the biggest filmmakers in Bollywood.
Yeah.
Are their styles very different, and what do you feel like you gained from working with each of them?
Yeah, their styles are totally different. I think with Raju sir, it's much. I think he likes real clarity of intentions.
Right.
He likes it to be clear from the moment I walk on that I'm a sleazeball.
Right.
That I'm not his friend.
Right.
You know, not really.
Sure.
So we from the outside immediately have the picture clear in our mind. He's not really his friend. This guy thinks he's the friend, but it's clear that he's not.
Right.
He's fooling him. So that's a cool exercise in just being like, let's not try to hide anything then.
Right.
Let's just go for it
Right.
all the way.
It's all yeah.
There's no, there's no, like in Rabta, it was all about you shouldn't tell that he's the bad guy, even though they put it in the trailer. But like, you shouldn't tell he's the bad guy until the midpoint, you know. But then actually, what I noticed when people would watch it, and even when I watched it, is that like their reaction was very like, he doesn't we don't get him. We don't understand what he's doing particularly. And I was like, yeah, that's because we didn't make that clear choice. Let's just go for it.
Right.
Let him just be bad all the way through.
Right.
You know? And then you can like.
Yeah.
I mean, then you can make more of a meal out of it. You know?
Sure.
If you're gonna mount the film in that way anyway. So because Rajkumar Hirani's films are mounted in that way.
Correct.
It's not about being left at the end of your seat wondering what could happen.
Right. It's very clear.
You're just being told a story in very bright and brilliant colors.
Right.
You know? Whereas with Sanjay Leela Bhansali sir, it seemed like he was interested in adding complexity. He, in a way that could potentially make a character not necessarily opaque. He also likes clarity of intentions, but the intention can just be weirder.
Right. Because that's such a fascinating character to have in that kind of film, right?
Yeah.
Or in any Hindi film, actually.
I mean, yeah. There was some kickback from the LGBTQ community afterwards, being like,
you're stereotyping the...
Well, yeah, it's the only representation of it is on the like evil side.
Right.
And consequently, what does that mean exactly and why is it necessary? But I just loved playing that character. I mean, I found it so fascinating that it was in this kind of a film.
Right.
I was like, wait, big period piece where I climb out of a tub with another man?
Right.
Fucking A, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was cool. I don't know, I didn't really think of them. I mean, you have to, when you watch the film, I understand, you have to look at it and be like, this is the evil side and this is the light side. But for us, it was just so much fun. We were not thinking about evil at all. It was just like, to me, we were the most fun characters.
Sure, it was.
Yeah.
And I remember the reviews, and I feel like most people really, that was the unpredictable part of the movie.
Yeah. And when just reading the script, that's clear. Everything was clear. In that one and Sanju, it's basically almost exactly what I read.
Okay.
Almost exactly.
Okay.
There were changes sometimes made in the morning, and sometimes different lines were parceled out to different people and things like that. Slight changes, but just general thrust of the character, it was all there on paper.
Right.
Yeah. Which I really like.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about The Wedding Guest, which is of course your film with Michael Winterbottom. It's actually dropping this weekend on television.
Hello.
Now, it's a road movie about a man who's been hired to kidnap a British Asian woman from her wedding in Pakistan by her boyfriend. I don't want to give away a lot because let people discover the film, but you're the only other crucial character in this two-hander between Dev Patel and Radhika Apte. Dev is interesting because his motives are unknown. He's the kidnapper. And you don't really figure him out entirely.
No.
And Radhika as well, who's sort of the victim, if you like, sort of starts to get foggy, in the film. Your character, Dipesh, who's the boyfriend who actually hires the kidnapper, is the only one who is sort of what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
Why was that interesting for you?
I really wanted to work with Michael Winterbottom, frankly.
I was going to ask, were you a fan?
Yeah. 24-Hour Party People, I just love that movie.
It is incredible.
It's so good.
It is.
And I'd watched it and I just remember being like, quite excited to be in an international film, in English. It's just so much easier for me. Prep is just 100 times easier,
Right.
I don't have to, you give me a new line the morning of, I'm like, okay, I've learned it. Let's go,
Right.
As opposed to, oh no, what, 3 new lines? No, why? Okay, I'll need an hour,
But yeah, that's what he's like, right? Winterbottom is constantly, I believe the material's constantly evolving?
No, it was more or less exactly as written, again.
Okay.
Yeah, if you came properly prepped with your lines, it was basically just how it is.
Okay.
I think Dave had gotten used to scenes with Radhika where he mostly talks and she just kind of looks at him, for a lot of the beginning bits at least.
Yes.
And so I think he walked into the scene with me being like, oh, it's going to be more of that. And I was, of course, because my character is a bit of a...
Yeah.
What a surprise. I I think he walked into the scene thinking he was going to be in charge.
Right.
And I was like, wow, I'm paying you.
True.
You're not in charge. Take it back. Don't fucking water. You know, whatever. Right. And he was a bit like, what's going on? And I remember this was my first meeting with him, and we both wound up outside doing push-ups just to get reinvigorated into the scene, because he was like, holy shit, this guy's like, I mean, he's basically, he's being his character. And I also have to
assert myself.
That's cool. That's great.
What was he like to work with? I know you work with Radhika, she's a friend.
Yeah.
But Dave, who's also the producer on this film.
Yeah.
What was that like? Is he a good collaborator? Is he?
Yeah. I mean, we just didn't have that many. I mean, I guess we did. It's fun. It was fun to like goof off with him in between takes, and then during the takes, it was all just very clear. You know, the direction was also really clear, and I really like how they work, which is, if it's 11, it's 11.
Yeah.
It's not
11:05. Correct.
It's 11.
Right.
The one time I was 5 minutes late, it was a bit like everyone was ready.
Wow.
You've made us all wait for 10 minutes. And it was like, oh, Jesus Christ. I was like used to, different sets. I thought I could show up and everything would be fine. Right. I was like, oh, okay. And then, what's it called? Working lunch? Yeah. Working lunch, 8 hours, done, finished, go home. That's it, not a second over 8 hours. I love that. You can really rest, you can really prep for the next day, as opposed to like going through a schedule like a zombie, which sometimes happens.
Happens, right.
Because you work for like 12 hours, or 14 hours, then you have to drive back someplace, and then you get some 6 hours of sleep and you're right back there. How do you recharge? How do you actually stop having ideas? That's the real problem.
Right.
I was just doing a film in London, and it was crunched for time, so we had to push through. So I understood the reasons why it has turned into that. But I've prepared the scenes myself. I've really worked on them. I've come with lots of ideas for things to do, and then at some point, scenes are changing, and you've been there for like 20 days. And you've been working every day.
Right.
And the next day, you're in the scene and you're like, I don't care. Where do I have to stand? Sure. Here? Okay. What do I have to say? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Acting,
You've lost that, you've lost that drive and that.
You actually just very simply, I then got 3 days off.
Right.
I went to London. I didn't talk to anybody. I took the 2 days completely off. I just met people, walked around. And on the third day, I was having dinner with someone who was asking what the film was about, and I started to describe it. Right. And over the course of describing, even though I'd done no active work on it whatsoever, I got like 5 new ideas for how I wanted to play the bits that had to come. And I've immediately called up Bijoy and been like, blah, 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 blah. This is what, can this happen? Is this possible? And you just need time to passively allow things to settle, passively allow new ideas to flow in.
Right. But let's go back to the wedding guest.
Yes.
Dipesh is this guy who pays money to kidnap his girlfriend from her wedding in Pakistan so that he can be with her.
Yeah.
But he's also the guy who switches in a moment, and he's perfectly comfortable and perfectly sort of, at comfort with his own conscience, paying again to have her dumped when it presents a potential danger or even an inconvenience to himself.
Yeah.
Jim, how did you wrap your head around Dipesh's motivations and actions? Did you see him as someone who's a bad guy, or was he this rich, spoiled brat who's also a coward of sorts?
Yeah, basically that. He's a rich coward. He just is not very used to people saying no to him. He's not very used to, if there's an inconvenience, if there's something that could potentially ruin his plans for the future, he just wants it out of his life. It's easier like that. It's fine. It's good. Why struggle through it? For love? What's love? You know what I mean? Just goal oriented, know, and so a bit ruthless, when it comes to personal relationships. And you know, it's interesting because when I read the script, I was really curious about how Radhika's character would be played.
Right.
Because at one point he says he's like, she's a snake.
Yeah.
And so then you wonder how much of this plan was it his always like this from the beginning?
Right.
How much has she talked him into it?
Right.
That technically his family's jewels,
Correct.
not hers.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How much has she
kind of,
puppeteered this?
Right.
And has the situation that's turned out just like a good get out of jail free card for him?
Right.
Like this thing has happened. Take it back.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know.
Did you have these discussions with Michael? What was the process of finding this character, or was it largely, did you work on it from what was on the page?
Basically worked on it from what was on the page. I think he saw that on the first day that I was, that the tone or the pitch for how I was playing him, he quite liked. He did have to tell me once or twice like, yeah, but he is in control, the other guy.
Right.
He has a gun, so, you know, just
Never
think about
forget
that, you know, whatever. And, because I was being like, shut up, you know, all the time. And I think it was a bit of like, no, like, if you, and it's true, if you don't treat a character who's supposed to appear dangerous with any fear at all,
right,
actually, you both end up looking a bit stupid.
Sure.
Because it defeats the general thrust of the movie, which you don't want to.
Right.
Because he has to be believable in that position, otherwise everything kind of falls apart. So, despite the fact that it felt better to want to be in charge the whole time, actually it is better for the movie that that he can take over.
Right. I'm not going to give away, but it's interesting how that whole dynamic sort of ends. And very violently, of course.
Right, yeah.
You know, it's quite evident that Michael Winterbottom has an interest, I wouldn't say fascination, in this region.
Yeah.
He's made, of course, In This World, which was about the harrowing story of these two Afghan refugees who make the journey from Pakistan to England, going through the Middle East. He made A Mighty Heart, which of course was the story of Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal reporter who was kidnapped in Pakistan and subsequently killed. He made Trishna, which was Tess of the D'Urbervilles with Riz Ahmed and Frida Pinto. Did he speak to you about why he's fascinated by this region, by the subcontinent, why he keeps coming back for more?
No, we didn't ever really talk about it, but it's just clear that he just likes the landscape. And it's interesting because he didn't seem like someone that like particularly wanted to engage with things, but he liked to look at them. You know, he wasn't one of those go out and meet everybody and like talk to the locals and go on a camel ride in Rajasthan. You know, he wasn't interested in all of that stuff. But like you can see also even from the film itself, he just likes how it all works together. I think that was the main fascination, is like, how can these extremes all exist within the same place? Because even the cinematographer he used also has a long-standing relationship with making films set in India.
Right. And that's interesting also because it never feels like a tourist's view of the landscape.
Yeah, it doesn't, yeah.
Or an outsider's view.
I hadn't really thought about that, but I think you're right, yeah. And he makes it look true.
Yeah.
And pretty.
Yeah.
Good mix of both.
Right. You know, Dave said something that I think was quite interesting. He said, the fact that we can tell this type of interesting relationship story and have two brown faces on screen, it's like a quiet victory. It's actually true, isn't it? You get an Oscar-winning director to come and make this movie with a British Asian leading man and a Hindi film actress, and you know it premieres in Toronto. It has this, it has this sort of international interest. It couldn't have happened a few years ago or a couple of years ago, could it?
I don't know. I guess not.
Right.
I guess, yeah, the whitewashing of international films is quite strong. Even now they talk about still they talk about like just. I read a tweet just now about Timothée Chalamet versus the guy in Moonlight and how I know Timothée Chalamet's name.
Right.
and I can't remember the guy in Moonlight's name, and they both had very similar roles and similar startings.
Right.
And they both were very good, you know? And it just is the case. It still is the case. So yeah, I guess that is cool. I guess that's great.
You know, the film drops, The Wedding Guest, it premieres on television this week. I mean, do you see that as an interesting opportunity? Because a film like that would never have got a huge sort of play in theatres. Do you feel like that is an interesting way to discover a film for cinephiles? You know, for those that love Michael Winterbottom's film, it's a great opportunity for sort of an Indian audience to discover the film.
Yeah, I guess if you still have a set-top box and you still watch television on actual television with a remote control and stuff, then yeah, it's a great way to watch the film.
Right. You know, finally, Jim, it's only been like 4 years since Neerja came out.
That's right.
And that's the film that sort of put you on the map. You were also so good as Khalil, the terrorist who takes that Pan Am flight, hijacks that Pan Am flight. Of course, that film has led to this rich and promising career. Do you also feel like in some ways it has sort of stereotyped you as the bad guy?
Yes.
So it was a double-edged sword then?
Yeah, it's, it'll change. It'll just change. It's just a matter of time. I think because filmmaking is so expensive, everything becomes about bankability and having imagination for what an outsider, for lack of a better word, with no connections in the industry can do is a risk, like a serious financial risk. And consequently, I think in order for people to realize that you can do different things, you just have to be able to do different things. If they keep seeing the same thing, they just assume that's the only thing you're good at. But I think that's changing already. Made in Heaven was one step in that direction.
It totally was.
Flip is in Bijoy's film Tesh. That's
the new one that you're shooting.
Yeah, I'm just the protagonist.
Nice.
That's cool. Sometimes I think about dying if you watch it. You know, Jonaki, Teen or other. Actually, there's enough out there that I've done that's not that space. I think it's just the big commercial things.
What does the lead role kind of, why is that also important to have? And what does that sort of afford you as an actor?
Having the lead role?
Yeah, when you're playing the protagonist, when you're at the center of the story.
Well, for me, I like it because I don't have to just there's a certain amount of time invested in my character and the audience is going to see events through my eyes, so I kind of already have them on my side.
Right.
I just have to then do the part.
Your job,
I don't have to bring them on my side despite them being against me because the story is structured in that way, so my acting has to be interesting in a certain way. And I'm not saying you don't have to do interesting acting as a protagonist, you absolutely have to. But it's just, it's like walking with someone like this as opposed to walking in front of them, and they're trying to get past you.
Right.
It's a lot harder to have them on your side if you're doing that.
Nawazuddin Siddiqui said to me that actually the hero is the most boring part.
Often.
Right.
But not always.
Not always.
And it depends who plays it.
True.
When he plays the hero, I quite like it.
Yeah, that's true actually.
Yeah.
He actually makes a meal of it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, I think as we continue to change our ideas of what a movie is, I do believe we'll get to a point where it's really not about hero and villain, it's really about interesting stories.
Correct.
Like if you watch A Marriage Story, did you watch this?
I did.
No,
gosh.
What a good movie.
Doesn't it bruise you it just leaves you...
Where they're both just highly complicated people.
Right.
And they don't always act well and they don't always act appropriately or nicely or any of those things, but you just understand them.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this in our last interview as well, the one about how just I don't believe in all of this hero villain thing.
Correct.
I just believe in like understanding people and playing, I want to say complicated characters, but truthfully everybody is complicated.
It is,
Everybody is. It's just a question of how you reveal it. what care the filmmaker takes into depicting that complication.
Right. Well, you know, I feel like you've done that in the parts. I feel like even the parts that, you know, on the surface are sort of villain roles, you've sort of brought that edge. You've given us some, you know, a little different dynamic to look at the person by.
Yeah.
Certainly it's true of Padmaavat. Certainly it's true of Made in Heaven, who's sort of the leading man, but he's severely flawed.
Yeah.
And yet he's someone you can sort of, you know the guy. Like you know people like that.
Yeah.
You throw a stone and you hit like
more or less
8 of them. Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you for these.
They'll ricochet off.
Literally off each other. Yeah. So thank you for these sort of you know, delicious, interesting performances in sometimes sort of two-dimensional roles and sometimes just characters that are already exciting on the page, and looking forward to lots more in the leading parts, in the protagonist parts, and the sort of strong characters. Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much. Thank you.
For the first time on television on Prive Premiere, feel the other side of The Wedding Guest, premiering on Saturday the 23rd of November at 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. Only on and PriveHD for those who feel the other side.